Welcome back, beautiful people. It's your TTA Pro, Mr. O, back with another episode. Today, we're going to be covering verb tenses, past tense verbs. Now, before we begin, just a small summary. Number one, we began with subject-verb agreement. And this is an important lesson which affects so many other lessons. It affects punctuation, rhetorical skills and strategy, pronouns, so many things. So today, now we're done with subject verb agreement. Check. We're going to go to number two now. We're going to cover verb tenses. And we're going to begin with past, and then there's going to be present, and then future. So today we're going to cover past tense verbs. Whenever you're tested on verbs, you're tested on two things, either subject verb agreement or verb tense. Those are your two options whenever you're tested on verbs. On your exam, verb-based questions make up 10 to 15% of your grammar questions. So if you have, for example, 10 grammar questions, you're going to have at least 1 to 2 verb questions, which is a lot, by the way, which is a lot. It's not a small number. So keep in mind, verbs are the main or the most important sort of grammar question. So we're going to begin today. We're going to cover the notes, we're going to cover the rules, and then we're going to practice. So let's jump into these notes. Now, keep in mind, I make all these notes myself, made for international students. So let's begin with section number 1. Verb tenses are essential in conveying timing and sequence of events. They help listeners or readers understand when an action took place and how it relates to other actions. In English, there are 3 main time frames: past, present, and future. Today, like we said, we're going to focus on past. Now, before we talk about past tense verbs, you need to understand there's something called regular and irregular verbs, and this can cause confusion. It's important to understand the difference between these two. Regular verbs follow a predictable pattern when forming the past tense. So most regular verbs receive an ed, right? Talk, talked, walk, walked, play, played, study, studied. These are regular, these are normal. But then there are other types of verbs, and these are called irregular verbs. They have a unique past tense and past participle form that must be memorized. Here are a few common irregular verbs. Go, went, gone. You see how it's irregular? It's not ed anymore. Eat, ate, eaten. Bring, brought, brought. Teach, taught, taught. If you look at the second column, this is the irregular past. If you look at the third column, these are the participle form, meaning has plus have. So for example, have gone, has eaten, have brought, has taught. Any questions here? So it's really important that you are aware of irregular verbs, especially with the perfect tense. Now let's begin with section 3, the simple past, ed verbs. The simple past is used to describe actions that started and finished in the past. It is the most straightforward of the past tense verbs and is often used in storytelling or in recounting past events. To form the simple past, use the ed for regular verbs. Use the ed for irregular verbs. And here's some examples, right? I visited my parents. They studied hard for exam and passed with flying colors. Mahatma Gandhi led India through nonviolent resistance. So when using past tense, It's also very important to maintain consistency. This is a very, very important point throughout your sentences. Always avoid mixing tenses unless there's a reason to do so. And one more thing, simple past is one of the most common answer types. Let's go to the next one. Past perfect. Ooh, this one really confuses students. Past perfect tense is used to describe an action that was completed before another action or a specific time in the past. It is formed using had plus the past participle of the verb. The past perfect tense helps establish a sequence of events. So past perfect is had plus verb. The past perfect is had plus verb. Action number one receives past perfect. Action number two receives the simple past. Now remember, you need keywords for this, meaning you're looking for the phrase, for example, by the time, by 1996, by 1985, or you're looking for the phrase, I did X before Y. I had eaten before I went to play. So there's a couple of things here that will tell you we need the perfect tense, past perfect. Action one, action two. Action number one receives the past. You look for the phrases by the time or I did X before Y. And the final one, oh, here's some rules or here's some examples. By the time I arrived at the party, you see that? By the time I arrived at the party, most of the guests had left. By the time, had left. This is action number one. This is action number two. Notice it's not in order. Also, it doesn't have to come in order. Look at this one. She had never traveled abroad before she won the scholarship to study in Europe. Action number one, she won. Excuse me. Action number one, she never traveled. Action number two, she won. The scientists had conducted numerous experiments before they made their groundbreaking discovery. You see how this is action number one before action number two. So when using the past perfect, look for clues such as before, by the time, or already. And the final one here is the past continuous. Now, this is not really a common answer. However, it has appeared on exams. The past continuous, known as the past progressive, is used to describe an ongoing action in the past that was interrupted by another action or event. It's formed using was or were plus participle ing. The past continuous is useful for setting the scene and providing background information. I mean, you don't have to worry about that part, right? So let's see the examples first of all. Let's see examples. I was studying when my friend called me with exciting news. You see how she was doing something in the past and then interruption. So timeline, study, call, and then you continue to study, right? While the chef was preparing the meal, the power suddenly went out. You see how the power went out, interrupted the action. As the sun was setting, the hikers finally reached the summit. Action interrupts another action. So when using past continuous, pay attention. when using the past continuous, make sure that you pay attention to the ongoing nature of the action. Okay, that's it. So this is verb tenses. We're actually done here explaining. Now we're going to practice. If you guys are watching the video, solve and apply. You can learn anything. It's just them out.